this is a great podcast episode that talks about the skills that you can create, the person that you need to become to help others, but then you can funnel some of those revenue sources from tutoring into real estate at the same time. It's like a perfect blend of both worlds. So Loni, tell a little bit about your portfolio right now for your co-living portfolio.
Real estate really, if it's just single family, is not very much income. So I was thinking, well, how could we increase the cash flow? And so that's when I stumbled upon co-living. I found a property that didn't really have any co-living in that area. It was a duplex, $230K, and it needed a lot of work. In the end, we have 11 rooms in that house. Each room was probably at that time $950 per month per room. That play was also going to be a burr because after that huge renovation, we were going to also be able to refi out the money. So yeah, now we have 27 rooms across 2 duplexes and a single family, and we're looking to grow that too to help more people.
How did you actually teach someone a skill?
I started CogniTutor, which is a tutoring company for foster youth and special needs. We work with everyone, actually. We work with the tutoring and mentoring for K through 12, but we also work with businesses who ask us to come in and help with their employees, to help with critical thinking and language and different things like that. We work with all students, but we really focus on foster youth. And the way that you teach a skill is, first, I would explain, okay, time management is important because it's how you actually manage your time. I'm going to prioritize and put this much time here and this much time here. Then I would go through an actual practice of trying to manage time. So I give example to them for them to practice. And then we think in their actual life, how are we going to manage your time? And we kind of go through that exercise and actually making it into a habit. Then we have it kind of in our schedule as homework a little bit later on for them to be thinking about it and actually applying that skill throughout their day-to-day. Because if we can incorporate it into their true lives, now they can just do the work without even thinking about it. Now it's just a tool in their tool belt, like it's just ingrained in them at that point. And so during that time, we're doing the planning and we're kind of talking out, okay, what's working, what's not working, how do we remove any obstacles? And then when they go and actually live it out, we will reach out to kind of see, okay, how is it going? Or we'll wait until that next session to review it. So together, I would say the planning, but especially the reviewing of what's working, what's not working, that's really where you kind of see the change.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Affordable Housing and Real Estate Investing. And guys, today I'm really excited for this call because we're bringing on Loni Lebanoff, owner, CEO of one of the most investable, scalable businesses that was featured on a TV show. I'm not going to say it all for her. I'm not going to tell her story, but I'm going to bring her on so that she can tell you everything that she's doing with her business. And she's also a real estate investor, investing in several co-living properties. So Loni, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hi, doing awesome. Thanks for having me.
Well, I've been excited to bring you on to the podcast. I met you like 4 months ago. And when I first met you and I talked to you about your background and your story, what you're doing, I was like, oh, I got to get her to come onto the podcast at some point. And I'm so glad we were finally able to get the time to bring you on because I know you got so much value to deliver. But for the people that don't know you, who is Loni and how did you even get into this world of tutoring businesses and real estate?
Yeah, so I started CogniTutor, which is a tutoring company for foster youth and special needs. We work with all students, but we really focus on foster youth, especially because just knowing our situation with the foster youth, according to data, by the age of 18, really what happens is they end up in jail or they end up killed. And so because of that, our main focus is really, let's give them those life skills where it's like those things that we wish all of our kids learned in school. So confidence, personal, like interpersonal skills, motivation, goal setting, financial literacy, all of those other things. And so that is the education side. We partner with the state, a nonprofit, or a school district, and kind of think like one-on-one mentoring, where either we're in person or online, we're working on the main thing that you need, but also your life skills too. And so I founded that almost 10 years ago. We did just win on a TV show called The Blocks, most investable, most scalable business out of the 100 businesses that were on there. So we're in 21 states now. We're looking at getting into all 50 in the next 6 months. And a little bit more recently, I did start Coliving just to be able to provide affordable housing to adults. And we are looking at potentially building out facilities to have the same idea for our foster youth and at-risk youth and kids who have been trafficked too. So yeah, I'm here excited to talk about anything education and affordable housing.
Wow, 10 years ago. I mean, talk about longevity and sticking it out with something. And I'm not even surprised when I hear your goals about wanting to expand into all the states. I mean, that's incredible. So how did you even start? And I want to set the stage here for the folks that are listening today, because so often we hear people say, oh, Kent, I really just want to help people. Well, my question back to them is, well, who do you want to help and how do you want to help them? Obviously, I always ask the question with the intention of leading them towards housing, but have you ever thought about who do you need to become in order to create the impact that you're looking to make? And that's why I brought Loni on today, because she has had a tutoring business for over 10 years. You guys don't think that creates a tremendous amount of impact for the population? And it didn't have to be real estate, but it eventually led Loni down a path of real estate. So Loni, give some background. How did you even start this tutoring business? Where was that story? Where did that idea even come from?
It's such a weird story because honestly, I had just graduated college. And what am I doing with my life? Like everybody who graduates college at that time. And so I end up just randomly with a student. Her name was Sarah, and she had failed our state test for 7 straight years. And so every single year, they're just pushing her forward, right? And so I meet with her 6 times, and she comes back to me and lets me know she had almost gotten a perfect score on that test, which is crazy because we never looked at that test before. And so literally all we worked on was, these are the skills that you need to be successful in your life. And she was able to apply those to the test. And so her school calls me and they're like, how did this happen? Teach on our campus. And so I make a company just off on the side. I'm just like, hire my company. And so really what I felt in that moment was, if a school is asking me how I got my results, no background in education, no background in business, don't know anybody in my family or anyone else who owns a business, I still felt the obligation to actually attack what the real root of the problem is in education, which is kids do not have the skills in order to learn and be independent. And so if you teach them just those skills, they will do well in school, they'll do well in college, they'll do well going to the moon or whatever business they want to start or their career. And it also helps with your family too, and like all your relationships. And so that became my mission at that point, to really help out with those kids who need it absolutely the most.
Wow, 6 times. And she almost got a nearly perfect score.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And I'm a parent. I have a 2.5, she's turning 3 soon. But now I'm really, really interested, because I hope everybody listening to this is going to start taking notes. Well, you said you taught skills. Mm-hmm. Can you give one example of a skill that you taught Sarah in your example? And how did you actually teach someone a skill?
Yeah, that's a good question. Before I got into this, I did 3 years of neuroscience research. So I was really looking at like certain brain waves and when they're elicited. So when I found out about this with Sarah, I went and talked with the top researchers in education, specifically on Learn to Learn, to see what are the frameworks, what is the most recent research. And so what I did with Sarah, before actually knowing all the research that I went through, is we were focusing mostly on reading comprehension, time management, and problem solving. So those are the different types of skills. And the way that you teach a skill is, first, I would explain, okay, time management is important because it's how you actually manage your time, right? I'm going to prioritize and put this much time here and this much time here. And then I would go through an actual practice of trying to manage time. So we have different examples of like, how should we manage time? So I guess the adult or the kid, we work with everyone actually. We work with the tutoring and mentoring for K through 12, but we also work with businesses who ask us to come in and help with their employees, to help with critical thinking and language and different things like that. So I give that example to them for them to practice. And then we think in their actual life, how are we going to manage your time? And we kind of go through that exercise. And the key part that's missing a lot of the time, because I mean, with podcasts, with YouTube, we hear a lot of great ideas, but how often do we actually make it a habit in our day to day? And so kind of the difference that makes all the change for the student at that point is actually making it into a habit. Then we have it kind of in our schedule as homework a little bit later on for them to be thinking about it and actually applying that skill and practicing it throughout their day-to-day. Because if we can incorporate it into their true lives, now they can just do the work without even thinking about it. Now it's just a tool in their tool belt that it's just ingrained in them at that point. And so that would be an example of something that I worked on with Sarah that we also work on with our kids and students.
What? Okay. So I read some of the books like Atomic Habits by James Clear, and they talk about habit stacking or try to get rid of bad habits. When you talked about creating a habit, that really resonated with me because I decided to create a habit where I would go live every single day and analyze a real estate property. And I create a habit where I would work out every day. So yesterday was day 365. So I worked out for 365 days in a row, and I've gone live for 365 days in a row. But I only was able to do that because I realized that, hey, if I put it out on Instagram and say, hey, I'm going to go live for 100 days, I have this innate belief that if I don't keep my word, well, people aren't going to believe me anymore. So that's what created me to stick to that habit. What have you seen work, especially from a time management perspective on creating a habit? Are you actually sitting with the folks and saying, hey, at every single night, we're going to plan our next day, or is it in the morning? What have you seen as effective strategies for creating that time management habit that you were talking about?
Yeah. So what we found is in the session, so we'll see somebody as little as one time a week, just for an hour. And so during that time, we're doing the planning and we're kind of talking out, okay, what's working, what's not working, how do we remove any obstacles? And so that's the planning time. And then when they go and actually live it out, we will reach out to kind of see, okay, how is it going? Or we'll wait until that next session to review it. And so together, I would say the planning, but especially the reviewing of what's working, what's not working, what are the obstacles and how can we get around it? That's really where you kind of see the change, because life is busy. And if we're just kind of oh, well, it didn't work and we move on, it's it's still a skill you want to have and you just need to get in the habit of still doing it. And let's figure out what works for you.
Oh, okay. So it's very customized, but there's a level of accountability, what it sounds like. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense because now you don't have a peanut butter approach, right? You don't have to meditate for 5 hours a day and do a cold shower every morning to do this. Okay, great.
Yeah, we're trying to prioritize and put the most important things. So what is going to make the biggest difference for you as far as results? Let's do that first. I don't know if you've read Eat the Frog. Yeah. So it's that big scary thing that is going to make all the difference in what you do. So focus on that and do it first versus doing these little things, whatever, that aren't actually going to get you the results. So that's what we focus on is when we're managing the time and prioritizing, that's kind of the approach that we do take. And yes, it is very customizable because everything in what we do, we're all individuals. So just making it so it works for each person in their situation.
Well, I'm really happy about that approach because I think it's the wrong approach to take a peanut butter approach, especially if everybody's strengths or everybody's way or everybody's personality is just different. So, all right, I get how you teach these skills now. It's beautiful. I mean, that's something that someone listening today can implement into your own life. And maybe you work with Loni's company to work on your time management skills, because I think that's a skill that applies to all ages, no matter what. So Loni, how did you scale this business? You get into 21 states. That's incredible. I mean, you started off as teaching one person, but how did you replicate or clone yourself so that your process kind of permeated throughout the entire organization?
Yeah. So the first thing I want to mention is it's the team. It would have been impossible for us to do this without the team. You need to have trustworthy people who are passionate. And I was very fortunate to have found the people and for us to really grow this together. And so the first thing would be the team. When looking for the team, you need to understand that they have the same vision, but not necessarily the same strengths. So it's recognizing my strengths and then what I need in order to complement me. Because, like, for example, I work with Amber, and Amber is very, very organized. She is much more clear with communication, and I'm very big picture and out there and networking with everybody, and so her strengths complement mine, and we don't need to be the same. And really being able to build a good culture, I think, is another thing that was super important, because understanding how we can communicate and that we respect each other and that we're all trying to grow and learn and become better was very, very important, because I'm not always going to be right. Right? That's why we pick a team that complements us. You're going to be better than I am in this certain area. And so really, in order to scale, I think that management and finding the right people and then being able to retain them was the biggest thing. Some of my superpowers are pattern recognition and systems. It helped to, let's figure out the easiest, most efficient way for us to do this, but always keep the end in mind. Like, I always knew we weren't just going to be helping a couple hundred of students. Like, I always knew that this is what's necessary. This is the root of the problem in education. So keep the end in mind. So when I'm building these systems, it doesn't need to already be set for like tens of thousands of students, but I need to kind of have an idea of how it'll go. So just anything that I did, I made sure I wrote down. So we had our SOPs, we had our handbooks immediately, and I never had to do something twice because I was just able to give it to one of our trusted team members to be able to continue, maintain, and improve on. That's another thing within that culture and that learning environment is you listening to your team too, because they're the ones that are there doing the thing. And so they see it, they know what the problems are every day. And so really it being a two-way street with communication was super important in the scaling too.
Oh, I love this story so much, Loni. And I really want to help people understand now that we know you can scale, how can they work with you? And the reason I share with this is sometimes I hear people also come to me and say, hey, I want help at-risk youth or kids aging out of their foster system. But they said, I don't really know how to help. And sometimes we come with ideas like, well, you can build an apartment building, and on the ground floor of the apartment building, you can have a community center with a tutoring center or something like that. So with that said, I mean, that's just one of many ideas. But who are your primary clients? Are you dealing with individual folks that are signing up for your service? Or are you dealing with organizations, like you said, businesses, the schools that are hiring you and your team to kind of come in and help the kids? Can you elaborate on that a little bit on who your customers are?
Yeah. So we work with everybody. I mean, if you know somebody in education, like an executive or in a nonprofit or something like that, then we might be able to partner with them in order to provide funded education to foster youth special needs. You name it. We've worked with the top students in the US, and we've worked with everybody. So if you do know someone like that, definitely we can reach out and we can hopefully make a bigger impact together. Another idea is, yes, we do work with individuals too, individual parents and students, but also with homeschooling groups and homeschool parents, especially with them because they're looking for that curriculum. They're looking for their kids, especially to be independent. We could work with them because those life skills, teaching them anything that comes after that learning is much more effective because the student now has the skills to kind of manage themselves. And so we go over emotional regulation too, and other things too, meditation, things like that. Just again, putting more tools in the tool belt. So those are the main clients, would be those executives or those in nonprofits.
Got it. So obviously with individual clients, right, it's self-pay, right? It's with their own business. But how does schools and nonprofits get their funding? Are you helping them apply for grants to help pay for your services? Or how does that all work? Or does it come out of the school's operating budget?
Yeah. So with the schools, they're given certain budgets that they can use for the different services that they're getting. And so we're aware of the different funding sources that we're able to use, and we kind of mention it to the schools. And then for some of those different funding sources, you have to do specific things. You have to like collect data a certain way. Again, we're very, very individualized, customizable for what the students need. So we're able then to do those things to make sure that we get that funding. And a lot of the times with the high schools we work with now, those students aren't able to graduate and get their diplomas because they haven't reached a certain score that they need in order to graduate. So we've come in and just in 15 hours, 1 week with the students, we're able to get them to get those diplomas. And so in those cases, we actually help the schools raise their budgets because now they're having more students graduate, which makes their grade higher, which makes their budget higher too. So we're actually helping some of these organizations increase their budgets.
What? So you are sure they're paying you a little bit out of their budget, but you are essentially giving a school a return on their investment. Essentially, wow, this is just mind blowing to me. Seriously, I'm like really intrigued with this business model. No wonder you won all these awards on the blocks, right? Can you give just one example? If there is a teacher or there is a principal or an executive at an education company right now, you mentioned that there are a couple of sources that they can tap into funding. Can you just give one example of a funding source and how you and your tutoring services will qualify it? And how do you help them meet the compliance, you said the reporting requirements, right? For them to actually get access to that funding.
Yeah. So a couple of examples would be like during COVID, we had a lot of COVID funds. We had ESSER funds, there are Lion funds too. We also work with the state, like the state has a budget for their foster youth. And within that budget, they give it to different nonprofits. So in the state of Florida, they will give from DCF, they'll have the funding, they give it to the lead agencies in the state. They will have a budget for the foster youth for education, for housing and food, for, therapy, all of those things. They'll have different providers who provide the services that are necessary. And so we're one of those preferred providers that offers the education to the youth, just from having given like really good services, giving data. So for example, we give a session report after every single session with a student, and we check in with the guardians and the parents every month to kind of see how are things going, are we improving the way that we need to. And so from all of that data that we collect, we're able to give it to the funders so that they have that data to give to the donors or just for them to continue to be able to get that funding.
Wow, that seems amazing. I mean, if you're a multifamily developer out there right now and you're going to put in a community center, I mean, Loni seems like the person that you want to talk to, especially you want to talk about providing those life-changing services that truly make an impact for a kid's life. Truly, this is what they need. You can't just throw them in a box and hope that they figure them out all on their own. I mean, they certainly can, but with someone's help, it's like Loni's company. And I really believe in the tremendous amount of impact you're able to create for these families and these youths all together. This is so cool.
It's crazy because we've been told by case managers, not only are we changing lives, we're literally saving lives. Like when I say the actual stats of what happens to a foster youth by the age of 18, that's real. And so when you save someone's life, you've changed the course of their entire life, right? And then all the lives that they now affect afterwards too. And so education affects every aspect of your life. Those who are more educated are healthier. It affects all different areas. And you mentioned multifamily, actually. So we have been in the talks with different multifamily developers and investors. And so we are seeing about potentially working with some of them for facilities for foster youth or at-risk youth or those who have been trafficked, because for them, they do need services to support them and build kind of that community.
Well, Loni, give us a sense of like how big is your team now? And are these all tutors or they also provide a bunch of different services? Give us a high level overview of your organization and how many people you have and what they're focused on.
Yeah. So we're in 21 states. I believe we have maybe about 1,100 tutors across the US. As far as our leadership team goes, it's about 17 people. And our team also is across the US and across the globe too, because we are preparing to go worldwide after 2025. That's kind of high level of our team. And I'm just blessed to have such a passionate team.
Wow, 1,100 tutors. And this is so cool because one of our most recent podcast episodes, we have a gentleman named Per Wimmer, and he came on and he had one of his secret millionaire TV shows where he went undercover and he actually saw what were the characteristics of the traits of these people working in nonprofits that can, one, attract talent, just like what you've done here, Loni, and attract financial resources. It all goes back to the same message, like who do you need to become? And I would argue, you got to be someone like Loni. You got to be able to attract the right talent. How can your vision be big enough enough to attract the right amount of people to come in to be part of Vision and help you create the impact that you're looking for. That is so amazing. And so these 1,100 tutors, are they like third-party contractors, subcontractors? Or are they actual employees of the company, Loni? Because I just want to set the stage of, if someone wants to participate, how do they become part of the team?
Yeah, so someone could become part of the team. They could be one of the tutors too. The tutors are independent contractors. We have so many teachers. We have people who have their PhDs in education. We have college students. We have people who are in their careers, like who don't know about education, but they go through our number one thing that we check for is like, do they actually care about the kids? Because like you can't substitute that. That's the first thing. Number two, we want to make sure they truly understand the subject material. Then after that, they kind of go through our training. Our tutors are trauma informed because a lot of the students we work with have been through so much trauma. And there are certain walls and like things that may happen with those types of students and just understanding where they're coming from. And so who our tutors typically are, especially for those that are younger, it's so nice sometimes for those students who have the wall up. They just want like an older sibling or a mentor, that is closer in age, that understands. So really a lot of people could help more with this situation because we have a lot of foster youth out there who need help.
Oh, that's really cool. And the people that sign up to be a tutor, right? Obviously, they need some subject matter expertise, but let's say someone wants to come on and help you teach time management or help you teach math, right? What does the onboarding process look like for that tutor? Do they have to sign up for a couple of weeks with you guys? Like, what does that process look like for onboarding?
Yeah. So they would go to CogniTutor.com, CogniTutor. They would come on, and depending on if we have students online or students in their area that need help, then we would potentially onboard them. And so they would go through our interviewing process. We would see their resume. We would talk with them. We would have some preliminary questions asked. Then we would, through that, be able to see, okay, like, do you actually care about the students? What are your motivations? And then through that, we're also testing them on their subject matter competency. So after doing that, then they would go through that different training that we have. And we would probably have a student picked out for them by that point. We would introduce them to the student, and we would always be there in case they ever have any questions. And we're personally reading every single session report that's happening. And so we're able to see after that very first session, we're reaching out to the guardian. We're seeing, okay, how did that go? Did it feel like a good fit? What do we need to do better for the child? So that's kind of how it would go from beginning to after the first session. And from there, that tutor will get more feedback. They're given resources and they're given our curriculum to be able to work with the students.
Wow. And do you track like how long does a tutor typically stay in your company as a tutor, generally, roughly?
Oh gosh, I've had tutors since we began.
Wow, that's so cool.
It's all over the place. And it really depends on, because we have so many tutors, it really depends on the tutor's actual situation. Some tutors are teachers and this is their passion. This is all they do, so they do it during the school day and then they do it on the weekends with us. Some of them are college students, so their circumstances change during the summer or during December. So it's really hard to say kind of on average how long we keep somebody.
Wow. I mean, that's it's complex because you have so many different varying schedules. So there isn't what I would call like a minimum obligation, right? For how many hours that you have to dedicate as a tutor, right? Especially if you just get one student, that's all you're responsible for as a tutor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there is no minimum just because, again, we're customizing everything for the students.
Well, I love the story and I love how you scaled this business. And then your heart is just so incredible because I can tell that you truly love helping people. And now that has translated to your real estate career, right? So before we got on the phone, I mean, you talked about how you got a few co-living properties. I want to make that transition now to real estate because this is a great podcast episode that talks about the skills that you can create, the person that you need to become to help others, but then you can funnel some of those revenue sources from tutoring into real estate at the same time. It's like a perfect blend of both worlds. world. So Loni, how did you get into co-living, and just tell a little bit about your portfolio right now for your co-living portfolio?
Yeah, so for co-living, I wanted to, just as a person in general, whenever you are looking at your life, you're thinking, okay, I need to diversify, right? And so you need to make sure that you have multiple streams of income, because if anything happens, you want to make sure that you have those other streams. With real estate, I know that it's kind of based on the market in a different way than what tutoring, especially with the government, would be like. So I felt it was another area I could diversify into. And so I started looking at houses, and I really liked kind of the student model where you have student housing. I liked that the people who would be able to guarantee the loans, and there would always be the demand. It would be very predictable. So I was looking at that. COVID happened. I pulled out of that deal. And so afterwards, I was looking at it and I was like, real estate really, if it's just single family, is not very much income. So I was like, okay, how can we do it? Because you want the property to appreciate, but you also want that cash flow there. That's really what helps it stay stable in my mind. So no matter what, we're at least making money on this. And so I was thinking, okay, well, how could we increase the cash flow? And so that's when I stumbled upon co-living. So I just went totally for it. I found a property that didn't really have any co-living in that area, and it was a duplex. It was $230K, and it needed a lot of work. It had 4 septic tanks, it had 4 bathrooms, it had 2 kitchens that needed to be redone. Like literally everything in it needed to be redone. I think it had like a $200K renovation cost because there were some things with like the roof too that we needed to do. So I kind of just went for it. It was like really my first buy. New market, new real estate, co-living, which is not like just normal. And then this huge renovation too. So it was like a huge learning curve that I just jumped into. And like, honestly, I tell people this all the time. You can do anything that you believe you can do. That was a testimony to that. In the end, we have 11 rooms in that house. Each room was probably at that time $950 per month per room. That play was also going to be a burr because after that huge renovation, we were going to also be able to refi out the money. So yeah, now we have 27 rooms across 2 duplexes and a single family, and we're looking to grow that too to help more people.
Wow. So let me just take a step back. 230 grand for the duplex. You spent almost 200 grand on a rehab to turn it from a duplex into 11 rooms that rents for about $950 a month, I think is what you said, right?
Mm-hmm, per room.
How long did that renovation take? Because this is the thing. Some people think when they get into real estate, like, oh, I'm just going to put in this money. It's going to be done and it's going to be snap or finger. Was
No.
on time, on budget? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Gosh, what an experience. When I was already under contract, I really started feeling and was like, is this going to work out? What am I doing? What am I getting myself into? Because it's like, once I get through all of this, then the actual work begins. So I had partnered with one of my good friends on that. Like originally I got it and he kind of came in and was like, let me help you with this. He had a little bit more experience with real estate. I definitely suggest, having a mentor, having somebody there who can like help you through the situation. So we partnered on it. He already had some contacts in that area who could do some renovation and things, but we reached out to so many teams and I couldn't even get quotes back from people. I was just like, there's this huge renovation. Nobody will reply back to me. And so it really, really was stressful. So I kind of pulled all the strings. I did everything I possibly could to like just talk to anybody to get any quotes that I could and get it started. So one of my partner's property managers worked with 3 different teams that do renovation. And so one of her teams finally agreed to help us. And so we completely redid both houses, like everything, flooring, bathrooms, kitchens, stuff with we repiped both houses, like everything that you could have done with these houses, we did. It was just take the next step. Like it was a day by day, do the next thing. The first house, one side was kind of livable. And so they still had some people there that were renting it overall. And so we kind of just kept them there for a while we redid the other side. I think the other side took maybe about 6 months or so. And again, this is from really no connections or anything, no understanding of real estate, or like now I can price things in a house, right? But I had, like, if you think of zero, the least amount of knowledge you could have, it really is possible to do that. I'm sure with the resources now, it could have been done a lot faster, but we got that side up and running. Then we needed to figure out, okay, what is the furniture going to be? How are the systems going to be? How do I find the people? And so you just take it step by step as it comes, just knowing that you can figure it out. Once you get there, it's fine. It's a huge task, but let's do what's necessary now. And so once we got that side done, then we started tackling the other side just to make sure we had some income coming in.
Wow, what an incredible project. And you don't hear too many people taking on a 200 grand renovation on your first deal. But what I really want people to listen to that story is understand, hey, who are you as a person? Do you have the grit to push through when things get tough? And do you have the ability to problem solve, which is exactly another skill that Loni and her company teaches all the time. And if you have that personality, you have the knack where you're partnered with someone that has the ability to problem solve. Well, Loni just pulled the curtains back for all of you. She literally said her first property, 230 grand, one for a 200 grand renovation. One side took 6 months, even though she didn't have any contacts in the beginning. But it is possible. And I really hope people take your story, Loni, today and feel inspired, most importantly. Your heart has been evident throughout your entire life, from your ability to teach and tutor other kids, at-risk youth, carrying throughout your career in real estate, of providing a beautiful home for working class folks. I mean, I'm not even surprised that you're so successful, Loni. This is so cool. I'm so grateful that you came onto the podcast today, Loni.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There is one thing I would like to touch on with picking partners, because that was so pivotal. Like I said, same thing with team. It's who you're working with, right? Like literally when you pick a partner, that is who you're doing life with. Eventually the business partner and I did go separate ways. But the important thing is that you're picking someone that you trust. Like, it's not going to be an easy process. Is this person going to be emotionally stable? Do you have an exit plan for all of the different things that can happen? Do you both understand it? And are you prepared for that? So as we were dissolving the business partnership too, it was still great because both of us were very logical. We were not emotional about it at all. So really, that's what I would suggest when you're looking at growing. If you decide to have a partner, which does make it easier if you pick the right partner, I would suggest be looking for those things.
I really love that statement about partners, because I tell people all the time, some of my partners that I partnered with on past investments and still are partnered with, they've been friends with me since 8th grade, but we didn't let that cloud our judgment. The first thing we talked about was, how is this partnership going to end? Because every partnership ends, no matter what. Someone's going to die at some point. So you got to talk about that stuff right from the beginning. How do you disagree professionally? And most importantly, how do you make decisions, right? Because if your philosophy is not on the same page about how to approach certain problems, if you got to text someone for every single $5 decision for changing a light bulb to get approval, that's not going to be a good time for anybody.
No.
So, Loni, thank you so much for that advice on partnerships. That is just so valuable. And let me ask you one more question, because this is a question I kind of ask everybody on a podcast. And their whole gist behind it is, I just want to get more opinions, because I think every opinion, every thought is just another piece of the puzzle. And the question is, why do you think affordable housing, particularly the lack of supply of affordable housing, is so hard to solve for? What are your thoughts?
Wow, what an interesting question. I think in general, the hardest problems really take a lot of innovation. So I think that it is being solved slowly as more co-living kind of happens in multifamily, but also in single family homes too. But it's hard because everyone wants everything and to eat their cake too, right? So the demand for it is definitely there, but those people are looking for space and quiet and affordable and all those things. So they're looking for those things. And then for it to actually work out for the investors, they need to be able to be getting enough rent that makes sense for the space and all the amenities that they're giving them. And so I just think that overall, we are slowly solving it a little bit more, but it's just difficult because of both sides needing what they need to make it happen.
Thank you, Loni. I know you didn't prepare for that question, but
Not
you
at
handled
all.
it. You answered that so well. And I would just bring it back to the picture for everybody. I mean, that's the reason we get so many people on this podcast is everybody has their own way to contribute to this problem. It's so massive. There's so much opportunity in affordable housing. You can pick co-living, which is exactly what Loni has in her model, but you can also become a tutor with Loni's organization. Because if you can help change a youth's life or anybody that you're tutoring in their lives and change the trajectory of their life, guess what? I bet a few of them are going to go down this path of creating more affordable housing for someone. And that's really why I created the podcast to bring on amazing people like yourself, Loni, that's making a great impact on the world, but also doing your part in the real estate aspect of it all. So this has been such a great episode. And I'm so grateful you came on. And Loni, seriously, thank you for what you do, because without people like you, I would have never had the home I grew up in. Without people with a heart like you, I don't know where my life would be today. So I'm so grateful, Loni. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. If people want to reach out to you or find out more about you and your business, where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, so they would be able to find me on LinkedIn. They would look up Loni Lebanoff, L-E-B as in boy, A-N as in Nancy, O-F as in Frank, F as in Frank. They can also find me on Instagram, ONI_POPS. And if they are interested in looking at the education with foster youth special needs, or honestly, any child, if they're interested in learning more about life skills, they can look up CogniTutor, CogniTutor.com.
Loni, this has been an amazing episode. I cannot wait to bring you back onto the podcast in a year from now and just talk about how fast you're growing. So I can't wait to have you back. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Let's do it. Thanks for having me.
All right. And we are out.